What's up, youngster?
Oh man, just chilling with typical days.
I'm sitting here soaking, looking at the Life of Pi.
Oh, no, oh yeah, man, that was a beautiful movie. I didn't one time. Didn't we have a conversation about that movie?
Yeah, I was telling you that I was the tiger at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah. Now that movie that you sent me, damn.
yeah. That's why I said to tell you that word right there. So I was like, it's funny. A lot of times when I be watching certain movies, I like this so man. This movie is so messed up. They was gonna love this, and then I laugh. I was like, I'll be laughing. I'll be thinking about that. Like, I know you like that stuff that's messed up, not because you like pain, but because there's a lot of
Yeah.
beauty in pain.
Yeah, I was laughing to myself today about just that very thing. I said that he picked out this movie because it's tragic. He said
Yeah, that's why I'm.
Dave's
Yeah,
gonna love this, but it is a lot of beauty in tragic.
yeah. That's why. And the movie was, man. That movie, not just the scenery, but just the dialogue was
Oh
beautiful, man.
man, that was a perfect movie.
Yeah,
I mean, that was another perfect movie. And that dude, I'm like, I cannot believe this is the same dude from Training Day. I mean, he got so into that character, man, especially at the end when he stood there, when he walked away from the train and he turned around and the camera went up on his face and he was contemplating, should I go or should I stay, or am I in too much pain? Would I bring pain to them? Would I be able to be a good man to him? Would I be, to her, would I be able to be a good father to that Indian child? And it's like, am I in too much pain? Am I too broken? Man, I read into all of that.
oh yeah.
And I'm like, whoa. And everybody in the film looked it so traditional. And I mean, there was no moderation in this movie, no place. And the cinematography was beautiful. Because I'm wondering, I'm like, now, if this is not the same black dude who did Magnificent Seven, he used the same type of lens.
You probably can go find the internet and find out what kind of lens they made with this movie.
Oh, I already know. They used an authentic. It's called an authentic green. It's an authentic. They call it an authentic lens. And what it does, it determines. They have two for like. Well, actually, they have a combination of them. They have a brown orange tone, like the one that they used in the movie Hoodlum. They use the bluish green lens, which is the one that they used in Magnificent Seven and also this movie. And what it is, they put that lens in there, and it makes they film through that lens, and it makes everything look authentic. The only thing they have to do is just have authentic looking scenes and stuff like that. And I learned all of that when I was training to be a cameraman back in 1999 for Channel 10 out here.
What? Wait a minute. Hold on. You never told me that story.
That's because mostly what was going on in 1999 was when I was dealing with that ministry.
Oh, okay, man. Just imagine, man. I can see you directing movies and stuff. You got the mind for it.
Yeah, because they was telling me that I caught on very quick down there with cameras and stuff like that, and how to move the cameras and stuff like that. And I got too caught up in them damn Christians, man.
Right.
And it was for free. I didn't even have to pay for it. There was a brother named Michael Towns. As a matter of fact, he was the same one who introduced me to the ministry. But simply because he was down there getting ready to be a black anchorman, he asked them if it was okay for me to come down there as an observer and maybe mess around with the cameras and stuff like that. And he was telling them, just if you like the guy, just add him on to your training class. And so when I went down there, of course, they added me onto their training class. I don't mean to say, of course, it wouldn't being arrogant. It's just that I just know what type of appeal that I have on people.
Right.
And when I got behind the camera, they noticed how very quick that I caught on and stuff like that. But believe me, I think about that a whole lot. I'm like, man, if I would have just stayed down there and left them damn Christians alone, you know, them Angel and these Kims and Bonnies and all that stuff, ain't no telling. Ain't no telling what I'd be today.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the movie.
Yeah, that movie was it was very good. And what was a very intense part is, and that white woman acted her ass off in that movie, man. I mean, she acted, okay? Because when she was so, she was dealing with hurt and sorrow and revenge all at the same time. When she said, I don't want nobody digging my family's grave. You saw how she was scratching at that earth?
Yeah.
And then she you know, and then trying to dig their graves, all of a sudden it hit her. I'm going to be burying my own family. You know, at first it was like radical and selfish and angry. I buried my own family, you know, because she's so used to taking care of them herself.
Right.
You know, so she's digging. She figured she can take care of them even then. But that's almost like a kid losing a parent that was very close to them, and the let's say the undertaker asked her to come in and do her dead mother's hair. She won't be able to do that because it's too painful. You know, some people can do it. You know, because when I was working in Chicago in Taylor's Funeral Home, we had some people who actually came in there and they were able to perform that. You know, but some people can't do it. And when she was digging their graves, she was able to deal with their deaths until she wasn't able to dig their own graves. And then when she broke and she just I mean, even her scream, I'm listening into her scream and I'm looking at her face. I said, this woman understands grief. She understands grief because she's sad, she's in turmoil, she's angry, she's full of rage, and she's torn. She's torn in half, and she doesn't like the fact that she's torn in half because it just doesn't feel good. And she is angry because she's torn in half by way of having to lose her own family. And the only thing she was doing was sitting up educating her daughters. I mean, that movie was deep, man. And what I liked about how sensitive and disciplined the soldiers was, and the I'm gonna have to watch it again because that's a movie. I'm gonna have to start remembering names because you know, by me saying that's a bad habit and not trying to resolve it, that's just being irresponsible. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
To say I'm just bad with names. Well, you don't have to be bad with names. All thing you got to do is put forth an effort to remember names. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, you went to grade school,
right?
You know, but when she pretty much said that she was going to dig her own graves, I noticed how very quick the captain had trained his soldiers to be extremely, 100% submissive to her wishes.
Right.
And by that way, it made it very easy for her to deal with the pain because that man was watching her and he allowed her to go as far as she could go. And then once he saw that she could not dig their own graves and she broke down, you know that whole demeanor broke. That's when he knew. He said, "Okay, now we can take over and help her." From this point on, I love the way he took care of her, man. He didn't take it. He didn't take advantage of her. He took very good care of her. He's very sensitive to her feelings and stuff like that, man. But what I also love is what I see in myself in reference to my Indian ancestors is that it just seems like no matter how harsh certain people can be towards you, and even when they have a reason not to hate you, because of nothing unprovoked that you've done to them. And I don't even see why I'm saying that, because that's almost like a definition. But all at the same time, I love the way the Indians still put forth an effort to let her know that all of them are not the same.
Right.
You know how they made those dresses for her, and because they knew it was cold, and all at the same time, I understood exactly why they gave their garments to her, because that had a symbolic and psychological and emotional effect on her, for her to wear the garments of the people who she feel took her family. So that was deep, man. That was a deep movie. And I totally understood it. I saw something else too in the senior Indian chief that I saw in my great grandmother, and something that naturally I always told you that I would like for myself.
And what was that?
And if it's one thing that I do know, that when Native America, when Indians know that they're getting ready to pass, they know it. They always separate themselves from their physical family members, and they always go someplace alone, because they know they're getting ready to return back unto nature. And when that Indian, when that chief was standing there by himself, and while they was observing him from a distance, I understood why they didn't approach him. They allowed him to stand there, and if I know Indians as well as I know Indians, he stood there, and then he sat there, and then he probably just sat with his legs crossed, something like that, and then he slumped over and died.
Yeah, I was wondering about that part. Like, when I saw that part, I was confused.
And see, that's like Graham. Graham broke herself off away from everybody because Graham knew she was getting ready to pass on. Cats do that. Some cats run away from home when they know they're getting ready to die.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I always said that if I was ever in the hospital, like if I just so happened to be in the hospital or at home, I would want my sons around my bed, so I can talk to them for a little while. And I had explained this to Edward David too, and I was telling him that I would want my sons around my bed, so I can tell them how much I enjoyed being with them in this life, and anybody else who just so happened to be in there, because the future is sacred. But all at the same time, I would have to ask everybody to leave so that I could make my peace with the Creator and myself. Because that's something you have to do that alone. So it's like what Edward David was telling me. He said, if people knew how much more in depth the transitional period is, they would know that having a priest by your bedside is absolutely meaningless. Because there is nothing that priest can tell you or assure you when you're making that transition, because it's something that no religion can in fact relate to. They can't really relate to it other than the fact that they know that the flesh is not permanent. Because as soon as you're born into the world, you're in the process of dying, and that doesn't mean that you're born to die. Pretty much, you're born to transcend. That's the reason why we're here. We're here to transcend.
Yeah, I agree. I like how you said that too. That most people have a very kind of the way we've been talking about death is depression. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to be beyond all this.
Yeah. And we actually are. We've been educated. We've been miseducated by being educated.
Yeah, and we've been educated by the European. We know in their culture they have a very horrible understanding of death, whereas Eastern cultures like the African, the Asian, the Indian, they had a transcendent view of death.
Yeah, and that goes to what Brother Edward David was telling me when he was saying about the way that funerals are performed over there. In not only India, but mostly around the Middle East, who still hang on to traditional ways of having their funerals.
Right.
You speak to your elder while they're present for the last time, and the next time, and you see them, their flesh is being burned. And there's even a ceremonial for that, because you stand there and you see the ashes rise up into the heavens, and that's a form of you might also say physical or tangible, being able to see their transition.
Right.
Because it goes up in smoke. That's the reason why George had used that method in the Phantom Menace on Qui-Gon Jinn's funeral. So the only memory that you're going to have of your loved one is when they were alive. And it makes you, it places you in the position in every manner of your you might as well say your existence, and to be able to not only deal with death a whole lot better. Well, actually, you're able to deal with it a whole lot better because you've been taught to accept it. Period. And like I say, your last memory of your loved one is when they were alive. So in other words, the reason why they don't have those type of funerals is because it's turmoil to see your loved one laying out there, stretched out in a casket, looking all, painted and stuff like that, and you stand over there, them, and you crying and all of that, and then it never ends. Then you roll them to the cemetery, and you got to stand there and watch your loved one's flesh go into the earth.
Right.
Knowing that some companies are going to throw dirt over your loved one. That's painful. And then you keep going back and forth, and even though you say your parents are in heaven, then why is it that when you say you want to visit mama or daddy, you say, I'm going to go to the cemetery and visit and visit mama? I thought your mama was in heaven. She is. Well, why are you going to the cemetery? I mean, I've actually seen people in the cemetery sit down at tombstones talking to their loved ones. If you actually believe that your loved one has a spirit, shouldn't you be able to do that any place other than a place for the dead? This is the reason why he said, why are you looking for the living among the dead? You should be able to communicate if you really know that your loved one is very much alive. Like I know John Scott is very much alive.
Right.
Because he sends me signs that he's fine. I mean that's just like if you happen to had been friends with somebody who was hilarious, and you are just going about your day, and all of a sudden you start laughing, and then what they told you, like whether it's a joke or an expression or something funny they said, you first laugh, and then what they told you comes behind that laugh. And then you say, wait a minute, what I noticed was I was laughing at first, and then what they told me came to my memory second. Why did it happen like that? That's just like when someone of the spiritual world just come and tickle your fancy, as they say.
Right.
And then you start laughing, and then you say, you know what? I remember. Right. It comes after. It comes after you're laughing. But that movie was a great movie, man. It had there was a whole lot into it.
And what did you think about the Indian speaking dialogue when they spoke in the foreign language? I like those parts too, just like how in Godfather I like the Italian part.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I like that. And that was respecting their culture. They didn't demand that they spoke English.
Another thing, I was reading the other day, I was meaning to ask you, do you know about Geronimo?
I know, I studied Geronimo, but that was way back in grade school. That's a person I'm going to have to restudy again.
So the reason why I asked, I'm gonna download 2 movies about him. They came out in '93. I'm gonna add them this weekend. Then that's what we could talk about. I was like, man, he was really Man, he hated, so not only did he hate the American government, but he hated the Mexicans too. He killed a lot of them.
Yeah, he did, and he killed himself.
Yeah.
Because they were threatening to take him in, and before he allowed them to take him alive, he jumped off a cliff, and that's what the whole thing Geronimo comes from. That's what all that stuff comes from. I mean, that's just like you hear a lot of songs being taught to little kids in school that sound innocent but are based on very tragic events.
Yeah.
That's just like when Custer had killed off a whole lot of Indians. I believe it was Wounded Knee or something like that. But it was one of those events where a whole lot of men, women, and children were killed, but the women were spared. But the children, the living children, wasn't. Now if there was any woman, Indian woman that was with child, she was spared. Only because that child will be coming into an environment where it can be immediately miseducated. And so what came from a song like that is that 1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians, 4 little, 5 little, 6 little Indians.
Okay. I didn't know that, so I didn't know about that. So I didn't know about the Ring Around the Rosy. That song has sinister meaning.
Yeah, but
pretty much every song that we sing as children has some evil behind it.
Yeah, well, Custer and them had went through the field because they had to give an accurate report to the federal government how many people died, and they said they just wanted the count of the Indians, boys. And so that's where that song comes from. And then they feed that to the young people, and it sounds cute, but it's a very evil song. It's talking about the genocide of the Indians.
Right.
Yeah, but at the end, I was happy that he got back on the train, because those two wasn't going to be good for anybody else other than themselves. Because they were so scarred and wounded, no one else would be able to understand them other than them.
I definitely felt for that young Indian boy. He lost everybody.
Yep.
Literally.
Yep, he lost his whole family.
Well, because when them racist white men outlaws, well, I knew that thing was gonna end horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Outlaw, boy, white man finna kill all of them, and that's what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he got his though.
Yeah.
He got his in the worst way. I did the same thing. I wouldn't have shot him. I'd have cut him.
He scalped him, I think, too, right?
Yeah.
That was even worse.
He scalped him first, and then he cut his throat. He first scalped him. If you look at it, when he first screamed, he scalped him, and then if you look again, the reason why it looked like he was hugging behind him, because if you remember that was a real long Indian dagger. That's the same type of dagger that Daniel carries in Dawn of Redemption. And so when he put that dagger to his throat and he was pulling back, he was cutting his throat. So believe me, he wasn't going nowhere. He sure brought that on himself.
Even though I don't, neither one of us care about Bible scriptures. When they talk about the white man, about how he just can't get right, he's a reprobate. Those scriptures are real.
Well, we don't have a problem with the scriptures in the Bible that are truthful. We just got problems with some of the scriptures of the Bible that are not that are contradictory,
right,
and not helpful at all. But the book of Revelations is jumping off the pages.
Oh yeah, but the question is it, the question that people don't ask is it jumping off the pages because God doing this, or is it jumping off the pages because they doing it?
Right. because they have government religious scientists.
Yeah.
I mean, if they can make it rain, they can cause certain things to happen in order to line up with what the scriptures say.
Yeah. I personally feel like so-called biblical prophecy has all been most of it just manipulation from them.
Mm-hmm.
I hear Negroes now talking about how the so-called Most High is going to use them to put our people back on the ship so we can go back to quote unquote Israel. I'm like, man, you trust the white man to even do that? I'm like, if he wanted to, he can just put y'all on the ship and blow y'all up.
Mm-hmm. You know, I was telling Brother Wesley one night, he was into the government want Minister Farrakhan dead propaganda. Then he said, you know, Brother Dave, they want all of our leaders dead. I said, that's what you think? He said, yeah, don't you think that? I'm like, no, because I can think for myself. I said, so if me personally, if I was an enemy of all the black leaders, you want to know where I would have dropped the bomb?
Wow.
At the Million Man March, because they was all there.
Yeah, that would have been a perfect place to wipe them out.
And he looked at me, I'm like, think about it. I said, now, if this white man wanted to destroy all of these leaders and just kill all these leaders off and get close to 2 million black men at the same time to kill almost 2 birds with 1 stone, he'd have blew up Washington. And do you care? Do you think that cracker care about killing a whole bunch of black people in order to, do you think this cracker care about blowing up Washington in order to kill off a whole bunch of black people and their leaders?
No.
This man didn't care anything about putting nuclear, provoking Cuba to drop nuclear weapons on Washington just so they can blame it on the Cubans. And then they found out, Kennedy had found out that the whole Cuban crisis was orchestrated by America. Those were missiles America planted there.
Yeah. Through the CIA.
Mm-hmm. And we all know who was head of the CIA back at that time. Yeah. George Bush Sr.
And you know, they say him and his son, they was the one, they had a big part in wiping out Kennedy. And they said that on the day that he got wiped out, they was all there.
Mm-hmm.
In Dallas, well, here in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bushes hated the Kennedys.
Yep. Yeah, it's a trip, man. It's just a trip that still in all, because you know how I think it's a shame that all of that kind of stuff that actually has to happen. You know, that's just like what she was saying, when, you know, all of these things have to happen to bring people closer together and to know him a little bit better. Why is that necessary, though?
Right.
You know, because if that is strictly what we were born for, then that implies that we didn't do anything in this so-called previous life or anything before we were physically brought here in order to deserve to having to go through that in order to get to know each other and him. It still doesn't make sense. I don't care how you throw it out there, it doesn't sound just.
No, it's not just.
So that's pretty much why I tell people we're really not going to know until this is all over.
We can't trust that book, because that book don't make sense.
Mm-hmm. And you know, that's why I speak what I speak, and people look at me like I'm supposed to be afraid. Well, you want to know something? I'm like this. The same creator that I'm supposed to be afraid of gave me the type of mind that I have in order to perceive these type of things, in order for me to ask questions. You know, and when a person wants to know why things are transpiring under a God that's supposed to be so loving and merciful, I don't see any crime in someone being angry and frustrated and half the time turning their face from the whole thought of the thing even existing.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like if this thing is the all-wise and the all-knowing and the all-wise, it should understand that. So when it all boils down to it, I don't think any of us is going to be in trouble when it's all over. And if any of us is in trouble when it's all over, to me, that's even unjust.
Right.
Because people say, I know Hitler gonna go to hell. You don't know where Hitler's at. Hitler may be kicking in heaven. You know, do you think Hitler liked being made the man that he is? There's not one revolutionary who is happy about having to end their own personal ambitions in order to do something because some old stupid government is making it difficult for them to survive.
Right.
You know, because had racism not existed, just like Martin Luther King said, I would have just been a simple preacher in Georgia. Malcolm would have been somewhere being a lawyer.
Yeah, because he had the mind for it, that's for sure.
Yeah. Marcus Mosiah Garvey, he would have been a big-time businessman.
You remember that scene in the Malcolm X movie where he was talking about what was that guy's name that when he was a thug, he was working for him? Yeah,
West Indian Archie would have been a mathematician.
Yeah. Basically, that's what you're saying. That without the system of racism, we wouldn't be where we are now.
Right. And so therefore, we're really not. We've never been in the position to really either be ourselves or even know anything about ourselves. So how can we be held accountable for a life that we've never got a chance to live?
Right.
So this is the reason why I'm telling people, y'all can sit back and be quiet if you want to. But I'm aware to create out with questions. Nope. I have another question. Why thus and so? Well, blah, 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 blah. Well, why did it have to be that way? Explain that to me. What did we do as people of humanity to have to suffer in order to just simply grow and come to enlightenment? That's just the way it is. So why did you create that formula? That these people have to suffer in order to become enlightened. Even though that's a journey that's difficult and it takes very deep understanding in order to come to appreciate it to the capacity that you consider it beautiful, but all at the same time, I'm even asking you about that. Why? Why was it so difficult? Why was it so complicated? Why is it every time we turned around we had a trial? Why did we have to why did we have to get disappointed and heartbroken? Why did you create something as disappointments and heartbreak? And then when we respond in our own natural instincts, instead of being a hypocrite like the Christian chooses to respond because they're manufactured and programmed to lie pretty much, even in their responses. When somebody like us responds honestly, why are we punished for it when we're more honest than most of the people who are out here faking it? Answer that.
And then, they say thou shalt not lie. Well, it's like, if thou shalt not lie, then we shouldn't be punished for being honest. They ought to be punished for being dishonest to themselves.
Right. And then you have to ask, why did you allow these people to be put in the position to where they were vulnerable to be made to be lied to the degree that they end up lying to themselves? Because, this is your shit. You behind all of this. You say, well, I created good and I created evil. Okay, well then blame yourself then. Because if we got some evil enough that we couldn't overcome, it seems like based upon that scripture, you couldn't overcome your own evil either. Because if you did, you would have been able to say, I am the good God and I am all good. But you say, I'm good. I created good and evil. And due to the fact that you created evil, you were evil. Because for evil to exist, some type of evil force has to create it. So you are not all the good God. Now, if you are not all the good God and we come from your image, and if we are like you in creation, then that means we're good and evil. And if you haven't overcome yours, then you shouldn't sweat us for not overcome ours. So what is this, some kind of fucking game?
Seems like one to me. Seems like we in a real life Hunger Games simulation.
Because I'm like this. Hey, you know what? I really don't care where you send me, because you created everything. You created me and all of that. And if I'm destined to burn in hell, then you created a person who was destined to burn in hell, which to me is the ultimate evil. So you create a person who is destined, ordained, okay, to go to hell, and yet and still through their life you send them through things just to so-called test them to see if they're going to be a good person. They're unable to be a good person because you done already ordained them to burn in hell. Now, due to the fact you use the word ordained, it means that you created in their nature to persistently commit acts that's going to morally corrupt them to the degree that they are going to end up in this place that you call hell, where it's full of people who wasn't able to overcome their own immorality, or some people who chose immorality, and that's even your fault right there. Because what happened to these people to the degree that they just didn't care no more? So they gave themselves over to the spirit and mind of immorality. And so because of them doing that, and even though you still created and ordained these people to be so, why is it that they have to go to hell? Explain that. You know, those things have to be explained. If what religion taught us is indeed a fact, it is indeed a fact, which we both know is not. But I do know one thing, because I've been there. When you do lead his flesh, you do go somewhere else.
Right.
And you are free. You're free from everything because you're free from knowledge and the burdens that knowledge carries along with it.
Because knowledge, like we were talking about, I think we had that conversation like a week or two ago about how knowledge in many ways is a trap.
It is. It absolutely is.
Wasn't that like a week ago we were talking about, we was going in on that for about a good hour.
You know, knowledge is nothing but a prison. I mean, it's a form of containment. And what knowledge is almost like a drug that you crave, because it's knowledge is not perception. Knowledge is a measurement leading to a so-called perception. When it a whole lot of knowledge, it only ends up ending at a viewpoint or a theory or something like that, but it never ends in a fact.
Right.
Now, perception, that's when you see everything as it is. I mean, as it is, even if you can't verbally explain it. I mean, even if you don't contain the knowledge enough to have a vocabulary in order to articulate what you perceive, you just get it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know, because there's a whole lot of people out there who say I understand, but they still won't be able to articulate it clearly. And some people will try to articulate it clearly. You know, they say, well, blah 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 blah, and then they may pause because they length of vocabulary is kind of limited, and so they ended up. Just don't worry about it. I see what you're saying. Proceed. Because I've talked to people like that. And so knowledge is, in fact, a burden. However, why was it present in the first place? You know, touch not this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That sounds like that thing had a history behind it. So why are you telling me not to touch it? If you're telling me not to eat from it, evidently something happened in reference to this knowledge of good and evil that you saw was unbeneficial to me. So why don't you tell me why? Just don't tell me not to eat from the tree. Tell me why I shouldn't. They said, well, if you eat from this tree, then you will be truly dead. But see, that's not explaining to me why. You know, but then when you think about it, Adam and Eve didn't have any knowledge. All they had was a mind to perceive and therefore obey.
Right.
And so they didn't have any knowledge in them that put them in a position to where they could question, tell us why not. You know, so it's a deep study. It's a very deep study. Because before we came into contact with knowledge, actually our minds was free.
Yeah.
And can't nobody tell me that that's not true, because when I was up out of here for those minutes, I was back in that original state of where I was empty, but in that state of emptiness, you are at your fullest. And most people won't understand that, you know, because when I was trying to explain that to Angel, he was looking at me like, "Whoa, man, that's interesting." I said, "It's not interesting. It's a fact." I said, because if it's one thing that you don't lie about, it's something like that, because it's so profound. You're unable to lie about it because your inner spirit won't have an entrance to lie about it, because that's how profound it was. You know, it's so profound, you want to be absolutely as accurate as you can when you try to explain it. I'm trying to remember some other scenes from that movie, but that movie was it's pretty deep. And I like the fact that the brother survived.
Oh yeah, I was like, when he got shot, I was like, oh man, they gonna kill. They already killing off the new Grove. I was glad that he made it though.
Mhm.
You remember the scene where Kristen was talking to him about how much he really needed him and how he loved him. I like that scene as well.
Yeah. That was a choker right there.
Yeah, that's how I felt. So I was like, normally, you know, bro, we don't get those type of props. So I thought that was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that they made in the movie.
Yeah. And you know, most I would say most whites need to see those type of movies, and that's having a Martin Luther King outlook when it comes to white people, to actually think that the majority of them actually have a conscience. But some white people look at films like that one, and they proud of that.
Right.
I mean, you should see that sister, that light-skinned sister, who was going off on the police, and they went up in her house and she pulled a gun on him, and they had to shoot her dead.
Oh yeah, Corn.
Yeah.
Corn Gaines. Yeah, I remember what that happened. Was that last year that happened, or that was 2016?
I think that was in 2016.
Okay. Well, yeah. What about her?
But you should, cause see, I had her on my Instagram, and she's still on my Instagram, and you should see the way white people talk about her, man. I mean, they dog that girl. Oh, this bitch was crazy and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, wow, we even a threat to y'all while we dead.
Yep.
And these people are walking the streets. These people are taking your money at the grocery store. They're bagging your groceries. You're standing on the bus line with these people.
Yep, everyday people that you don't know everyday white folks that you think are nice or whatever. The only reason why a lot of them are nice is because they have to be on their job.
Mm-hmm.
A lot they can hide on the internet and you never know it's them.
Mm-hmm.